Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Tonight, I'd like to talk about maturation, African Americans, maturation, developmental delays, and ethno aggregation, politics, education, and family structure. Now, in psychology, maturation, developmental delays is related to stages in life in the section of lifespan developmental psychology, and is speaking about the delays in maturing in adults or children from different phases or stages. Some of it, of the delays, is due to internal, for example, some form of mental dysfunction, like autism, for example, or learning disability. And sometimes it comes through external, which is the environment that we live in. And when you look at the subject in its manner or its whole depth, it will let you know about where these dysfunctions come from and what stages in life and what stages of life it comes and how does it affect a person and what they are doing. Right? Some of it is coming from, I said, internal, and some of it is coming from external, the environment. For example, parenting skills, what type of parents you have, what type of environment you grew up in, what type of home you grew up in, what type of environment you live in, and how that environment affect you, right? Then when we look deeper into this particular subject, when we talk about the aspects of African American in the US, the delays or the developmental delays that we can see is when we look at how Black Americans politics play out, how a lot of our peoples are not informed about politics or being on code. Furthermore, we can see it when we talk about issues such as ethno aggregation, how Black Americans are not on code and we don't practice ethno aggregation because we choose not to be ethnocentric, and we don't practice ethno aggregation, which means that we are doing politics. We're doing business with each other. And due to the lack of this, or the lack of the awareness of this in our societies, we suffer, and we suffer big time. And a lot of this comes from self-hate. When you look deeper into the subject, where it comes from, where it derives from, it comes from white supremacy and the effects of slavery within the United States on the African Americans, how we are not functional. A lot of it points to slavery in the US. You have to remember slavery impact Black Americans. For example, in slavery, you didn't have freedom, and it was forbidden for slaves to learn how to read. So, for example, when you look at developmental delays with children or whatever, and when it comes to not able to read or things like that, internal and external things. So, for example, a child not able to read or not in the household where principles of learning and education are not fostered, you'll find that that child does not do good or do well in school, right? So you look at the cause of it. Why the child is not performing in school? Is it because of something going on internal, meaning he has a learning disability, or is it something external, meaning it's coming from the society? Maybe in his house they don't have food to eat, for example. Maybe in a house there's only one parent. Maybe the parents inside the house have a low education. So when it comes to this point, we will look at what is the cause. Same thing, we have to look at African Americans, why they're not able to practice ethno aggregation, why they're not on code. And so we got to look at slavery. While our peoples, our ancestors were enslaved, it was forbidden for us to learn what, how to read and write. It was a crime, and if it's a crime, that if the person was caught or the slave was caught, he could be put to death. Right? It was a punishable crime. Right? Black people were not allowed to join in groups, be in groups. Right? They were not able to be in groups because this in slavery and even under Jim Crow, that they considered black men in groups as a threat, meaning in slavery, there's going to rebel, for example, right? They were going to rebel, for example. So they were not able to be in groups and have discussions in the public, right? So when we look at a lot of the things when it comes to African American culture today, when it comes to ethno aggregation, when it comes to us having a non-political stance and not being on code, a lot of it comes from slavery. And we were not allowed to mature as academically, when we were not allowed to mature on a political level. And a good example of the political level that we were not allowed, you can see by the assassination of our leaders, like Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, the incarceration of the Black Panther Party, COINTELPRO, destroying civil rights movements and organizations. So that is from COINTEL, is from the US government, the FBI, cracking down on black movements, which is not allowing black people to have a political opinion or a political position or a political organization that further cause our people to be far away from politics or black politics that benefit black people. So when we look at the maturation, developmental delays of African Americans related to ethno aggregation, politics, education, and family, it all comes from one source. The problem comes from one source. And that one source is the white supremacy, US government. US government and white supremacy. The reason why mass incarceration was forced on black people was to make sure that there's no black movements. And the way to destroy a group of people first is to what? Incarcerate their men. Incarcerate their men. Even the feminist movement amongst blacks, the feminist movement amongst black women was to cause a division between the black male and black female, because the black woman, she's a lesser of a threat. The civil rights movement had black women part of it, but the black men were the leaders of it. And because the government no longer wanted blacks to be in opposition to their white supremacy system, what they did was they destroyed the black household. They made sure to take away jobs and work opportunities for black men. And this is where you find today in the black community, there's no vocational schools. There's no access to real education that's going to get them jobs or money. And that's why we have the low standards of education in the public school system. This is not by accident. This is by the US government. It's to make sure that black people do not mature as a race of people in America to be competitive against white supremacy in every forms of fashion, from an economical level, from a political level, or from a family moral structure level. That's why the liberals in the Democratic Party is pushing the LGBTQI agenda in the black community, because two gay people cannot have children. It's going to cause a lot of dysfunction in the family, which already has a lot of dysfunction in it from white supremacy. from the welfare system, from the single female household created by the US government. So when we look into why Black Americans have not matured politically, why they have not matured economically, and that's ethno aggregation, why they have not matured educationally, why they have not matured as a family structure, because it has been planned this way from the US government. US government is synonymous with white supremacy, no matter if they put a black face to it, because you have a lot of black politicians in the black community who do nothing for black peoples or solve their black problems. And for us to mature and get out these developmental delays that we have in the black community, where we see today our youth, they are fascinated with entertainment, everything that's not good for an individual. Our youth are fascinated with it: music, hip hop, illicit sex, drugs. None of those things going to make them strong. Rather, yeah, it's going to make them in our societies more weak and cause more dysfunction. And then you turn around and ask, who legalized these things? Who are the ones pushing these things in the black community? Who are the ones in the lead of this, and why? Because it would divide us more. It would keep us lost more. We don't like what is good for us. This is why in the black community today, we have no leaders. And the leaders that the people take are entertainers and rappers and athletes. This shows that we have not matured politically as a people. I just wanted to say that. That's some of my thoughts for today. Inshallah, I'll talk more about this topic another time. But we have to start asking ourselves why our people have not matured politically. Why our people have not matured educationally. Why have our not people mature economically? Why are we not maturing? Why are we not reaching those stages? Because to reach the height or the pinnacle of each one of these stages in politics, in economics, in education, and moral standards, we have to free ourselves from the white society that we live in. We can no longer look for white people to solve our problem. Rather, yet they're the cause of a majority of our problems in this society. I don't care if it's coming from a Democrat or it's coming from a Republican. And when we decide that we are going to do for ourselves and leave off from our oppressors, this is when we're going to get better results. And we cannot mature, reach the pinnacle of these things if we're still dependent on whites and we're not independent.